So, brothers and sisters, thank you so much. Um, you know, this is the season of spring, and Mother's message was very deep. I want to thank all mothers and sisters and daughters, especially thank you to our true mother. And, for those of you that caught Mother's message on the 8th, it was the 7th for us, but the 8th in Korea. This is the, delayed celebration because of COVID-19, the delayed celebration of True Parents' Holy Wedding Anniversary. And, Mother said many important things, and Dr. Kim highlighted some of those things. And so for some reason, my mind, even in my letter I sent to Dr. Kim to share with Mother, actually, I was distracted by Mother's beauty for the whole speech, like especially her clothes and her incredible top, which is so spring-like with just flowers and green leaves. It was beautiful. I thought, Dr. Kim, I want to catch that material. We can make some ties or some shirts, really to catch Mother's mind and Mother's spirit about the spring. She was sharing it like a message of hope, like the spring is the season of hope. And also the best natural description of God's love for humanity. Her clothes were talking about spring. Her message had this underlying theme throughout all of the important announcements. I kind of felt like Mother was saying, come on, guys, it's spring. So get rid of the dust, get rid of any false remaining concepts. Get with the program and let's work together to fulfill God's dream. So for that reason, I thought the title of the message today that I'm sharing could be that. Like Dr. Kim said, Heavenly Parent had a dream. And let's go straight into some words that Mother shared with us at this celebration. She mentioned, a few days ago, I was walking around looking at the blooming azaleas. All around the flowers, you could see bees and butterflies dancing and working hard, actually, harvesting the nectar. At that time, I felt that Heavenly Parent, the Creator, had a dream and created heaven and earth, all of creation and this beautiful season for the sake of human beings. Isn't that beautiful? So for some reason, even though Mother was sharing so many important major announcements, this was the theme, this was the concept that stuck with me throughout everything. So I want to reflect on that today. What is it about a mother's perspective that is unique? Maybe I, as a brother, maybe I can't really speak to it too much, but I can try. I recognize, for example, that good mothers want to bring things into unity, don't they? They want to bring things to a conclusion, in a sense. You can say, like, men might otherwise just keep on creating new things endlessly, but women tend to like to bring things to conclusion, to bring them in, to nurture them. For example, many times when I'm trying to convey something to my wife, I'm telling my wife a story, sometimes she'll cut me off and say, what's the conclusion? Now, this might be because of me. In our case, it might not be usual. Maybe because I like telling stories, maybe because I go on and on. My wife might say, look, what's the conclusion? It's almost as if she wants to know what the conclusion is first and then find out whether she wants to know the whole story behind it, because she cares about the point. What's the main point? And, consider, for example, a husband's contribution to giving birth to a child, to making babies. A husband's contribution is somewhat short-lived, you could say. But it's our mothers, it's our sisters, it's the woman who is nurturing for 9 months to bring that child to bear. Not even just 9 months, but continually ongoing, right? We are looking at the mother do all of that incredible hard work and nurturing. And so in these words that we just heard from our true mother, we have Mother contemplating God's dream and really bringing us together, bringing us to one mind. True Mother is painting a beautiful picture. When she's talking about the flowers and she's talking about the bees, I think she's conveying a secret message to us, don't you? She's talking about the flowers and the bees and the spring season. She's expressing the spring season as if it's a gift for humanity. But what really stood out to me in this phrase that I just shared with you was this term, working hard. You know, both bees and butterflies are helping to pollinate flowers. So they are working. It's so interesting. We look at them. Sometimes we might be afraid of the bees. Sometimes we might look at the beauty of the butterflies. But how often do we consider what they're doing as work, especially working hard? So let's look at it more closely. You know, bees have shorter legs than butterflies, and they go right into the flower and they start, you know, sucking on that nectar. They tend to go deeper and they're closer to the pollen because of their shorter legs. So the pollen tends to stick not only to their legs, but their whole body. And they collect a lot of it. And so they're distributing this pollen around the neighboring area. They tend to go from flower to flower within a near proximity. Butterflies, on the other hand, if we want to talk about butterflies, they have longer legs, okay? They have longer legs. And what happens, though, is that they don't collect as much pollen. They collect less pollen than the bees because of that, because their bodies are not as close to the pollen. However, because of their beautiful big wings, they travel further. So it's because of the butterflies that the flowers are able to spread beyond just the near vicinity that the birds are working hard to spread. Isn't that interesting? Not only that, but the butterflies put on a show, you know? They dance for us. It's almost like they're showing off. Do they really need to go flit, 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 you know, really catching our attention? So they're working hard and putting on a show at the same time. You know, Father paid a lot of attention to nature from his youth. He talked about many times about observing honeybees. He's watching his father you know, take care of his bee colonies. The father would say that the bees would plant their legs so firmly in the flower to suck up the nectar, and they won't let go, even if you pull on the bee's rear end. You know, Father's explaining this to say that literally the bee is willing to risk its life to fulfill its responsibility. You know, each of these animals, each and every insect, each and every animal, every part of creation has its place, and it's working hard to fulfill its role. Who thought of all these extraordinary systems? Who thought of all of this working within nature? We know, we believe it's our heavenly parent, God, and did it for our sake. Yes, for beauty, and in many cases to feed us, but also to teach us. Don't you think so? You know, some of us might think that Mother was simply sharing the story about the butterflies and the bees to add some color to her speech. Do you think so? Like just like an intro to her speech. Do you think so? I believe it's more than that. I believe that Mother is expressing her most ardent hope for us to learn how to joyfully work hard to fulfill our part of God's dream. You could almost say that Mother might be saying, like, you know, guys, look, if the bees can do it, you can do it. You know, I think Mother, you know, was bringing that theme to bear because she's really longing for us to be like them, harmoniously working hard for the sake of the whole. So I want to actually take a look into a couple of verses from the Bible. Let us look first from the book of Job in chapter 12. And this is what he's saying almost as if in poetry. But now ask the beasts and let them teach you, and the birds of the heavens and let them tell you, or speak to the earth and let it teach you, and let the fish of the sea declare to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In whose hand is the life of every living thing and the breath of all mankind. You know, many times we refer to the earth as the Mother Earth, and Mother is bringing this awareness to us to really love ourselves, God, one another, and the earth, and to pay attention to it, to learn from it. So, you know, this is not a new concept, but it is a concept that surely we must, especially on this Mother's Day, really pay attention to. Let's go on. Let's look at Paul in his letters to the believers in Rome. When he's in Corinth, he's writing in chapter 1, verse 20, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. So in other words, there is no excuse. We know there's no excuse to be ignorant of God's nature and God's dream. You know, the harmony of the universe is spectacular, isn't it? Can we talk about it just a little more? Can I share a little bit more? You know, because last week I mentioned about the squirrels in my backyard. One of them we named Jerry. He's the one that seems to always perch on the little roof by Hannah's window and tap on the window sometimes. And so Hannah and I named him Jerry. His name is Jerry, and I'm sure he's still one of those squirrels eating the dropped bird seed on my neighbor's yard just next to my backyard. I check on them occasionally. Every day I'm checking. They're still playing with one another, playing with the birds. And so I want to ask a question to you guys. This one's for the kids. So if there's any kids watching, get ready. Listen to me now, if not before. I'm going to ask you a question. And raise your hands if you know the answer. What do birds eat? What do birds eat? Do you know what they eat? They eat nuts, right? They eat nuts. They love acorns. We all know they love acorns, but they love walnuts, also pecans, hazelnuts, all kinds of nuts they love. And so if you got that answer right, any of those answers, any kind of nuts that fall from the trees, please write it in for your kids that your kid got the answer right there in the chat. I want to know who's paying attention and which kids are smart enough to know what squirrels eat. It's good to watch them. Have you seen how they eat the nuts? It's the cutest thing ever. You can Google YouTube videos. They eat these little things with two hands, munch, like that. It's the cutest thing ever. But they don't just eat them all at once. Sure, they might snack on one or two at that moment, but they hoard them. Did you see that? They hoard them. They hide them. You might think it's selfish, but they hide them all over the place. They bury these nuts. So you might think that's selfish, but amazingly, not only do they hoard them and bury them, they forget where over 70% of the nuts that they buried, they completely forget. You know, they're saving them till winter, and then they completely lose track of where they've buried them. So you might say that's selfish and careless, but in fact, it's not. It's all part of God's design, because the truth is, these nuts are seeds, and the trees that grow from these seeds wouldn't grow unless they were buried. They need to go into the soil, and the weight of the nut is not enough really to take it into the soil deep enough to grow. So these squirrels are actually helping reforest these trees, and their dementia or their forgetfulness is also somehow part of God's plan, such that while they may be saving them for winter, what they're really doing with at least 70% is they're tithing 70% to the reforestation of the beautiful forest. So isn't that an incredible story? And these squirrels are working so hard. It's amazing how everything in nature seamlessly works together, because nature, everything's working according to this grand design. Even if you think they're working for themselves, still their instinct is making it happen in a way in which it all works together. But human beings, we're a little different. We're a little different. You know, if we act according just to our physical desires and needs, we end up hurting the whole. It's not harmonious with the whole, especially if we act living according to our own limited concepts. This is what I want to challenge us today, you know, because we may still have some limiting concepts. It's those concepts that are not part of God's dream and not part of God's plan will limit our ability to engage fully with God's dream for us. So what is God's dream for us? Our Heavenly Parent's dream is that we live in harmony with one another as God's children. We're supposed to be owners of the universe. Number one, owners of the universe. That means that everything that God created, actually in of itself, it doesn't have a sort of internal sensibility toward God. Even if its instinct drives it to reflect God's nature, it doesn't have an awake internal sensibility towards God. That means God cannot govern the universe directly, contrary to what many may think. Rather, God gave us those sensibilities to be able to relate with all things and govern them and rule over them with God's love. First. Secondly, as such, we are to stand as mediators between spirit world and physical world. Isn't that amazing? That means if my mind and body is united, I become a bridge between the spirit world and physical world. And thirdly, we are literally the substantial encapsulation of everything, right? That means we are the blueprint for creation in a sense. We know that we were created in God's image, but God pre-created the universe in our image. Like we are a microcosm of all of that. The universe was created with us in mind. So that means if everything that we see in all that harmony clearly exists, even just in the physical world, that means that kind of harmony is supposed to exist in us, not just physically, but spiritually also. Isn't that incredible? Let's go just for a moment back to scripture, back to the word. This time, let's go to the divine principle. We're going to go to chapter 1, section 6. The universe was created after the pattern of a human being who is in the image of God's dual characteristics. Therefore, the structure of the universe and every entity in it resembles that of a human being. So why then do we not see this harmony in our daily lives, brothers and sisters? Why do we not see it in our daily lives? Mother mentioned this also in her speech. She said, since the fall of the first human ancestors, it completely destroyed God's ideal. It destroyed God's dream. Because even though our Heavenly Parent was the true owner of heaven and earth, our Heavenly Parent could never stand in that position. And over 6,000 long years, our Heavenly Parent had to endure, waiting patiently, looking for human beings who would restore the world and accomplish Heavenly Parent's ideal. Do we understand the simplicity of that? It's just what we were reading right now. God cannot own it all directly. God needs us to stand in our rightful place, in our rightful position. Not only is God been waiting, but those squirrels, Jerry the squirrel has been waiting. The birds have been waiting. The fish in the sea have been waiting, teaching us, longing for us, begging for us to catch up with God's dream, God's plan. Let's look again to Paul as he writes in Romans 9, chapter 8, verse 9. The creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. Even Paul knew this 2,000 odd years ago. This is no new concept. Both heaven and earth are waiting for its mediators, the true lords of creation. Even God doesn't get to have the physical experience without us. The heavens don't get to have the physical experience without us. And the world, the earth, longing, waiting for us to stand in our rightful position, doesn't get to truly be loved and understood and received and connect to God's love without us. I'm sure that those butterflies and those bees dancing around for mothers as a show for mother the other day were singing with joy, such that mother was taking the time to recognize, not only recognize, but represent heaven in that recognition. So what are our limiting concepts, guys? What is stopping us from really standing in that position? You might say that you don't have any limiting concepts, right? You might say that, that's other people. I know the principle, I have the blessing. I don't have any limiting concepts. I'm pretty good, Other people, it's easy for us to see other people's limiting concepts. But what about our own? Often it's difficult for us to really recognize because fear is at the root. Let's be kind to one another. It might be easy to recognize one another's concepts, false concepts, but remember, oftentimes we hold on to these ourselves out of some kind of protective or coping mechanism because of something that happened to us ancestrally or in our own lives. And so we need to really pray on this and recognize it in myself. I need to recognize my limiting concepts and be willing to let them go. Let them go. At least one, maybe at least one this week. How about that? Actually, we can learn from nature here too. Dallas is one of the stars of our show. So I can speak about Dallas. Dallas, I mentioned once that he's not cute. Actually, he is so gorgeously cute that my entire family struggles every day to figure out, why is Dallas so cute? But even Dallas has some limiting concepts. And it's probably not his fault or nature's fault, but something we did, maybe something I did. I don't know who did it, because this is what I see happening. Whenever he wants to go outside the house or come inside the house, what do? You open the door, and and he's only that big. He doesn't need more than that much space, but you have to open the door wider than that for Dallas. He needs it open all the way. If it's only halfway open, he won't come through. And not only that, he needs it all the way open, and then he doesn't want you to have your hand on the handle, right? He wants you to take 3 steps away from the door before, he's just sitting there looking up at you, looking at the door, looking up at you. And until the door is wide open and you're very far away from the door, until that happens, he won't come through. Why? I think something must have happened somewhere along the line. Maybe he got caught in the door. I honestly, guys, don't worry. I don't remember doing this, but it maybe sometime happened. His tail got clipped when he was coming through, just touched. And he's a small dog, so he's sensitive. But surely this is a limiting concept that's holding him back from walking through the door. And similarly for us, we have many of these things, brothers and sisters. Heaven is being built here on earth, not somewhere else for just a select few to visit. That is God's dream. Mother spoke about it. She spoke about the time when she married True Father and she received the revelation that in the future, all the people would be citizens of the kingdom of heaven, citizens of Chanelguk. That's a blessing, but it's also a very real responsibility. You heard Mother talking about this. Mother said some things like, don't let your concepts, block you from understanding what I'm saying to you. Don't let your concepts stop God doing what God wants to do through you. Mother said, I don't want to hear unfounded words, rumors, false testimony. Let us march together with one voice and one action. She referenced the sunflowers. Again, nature, the sunflowers, they will turn as one to the sun, whether it's a cloudy day or a gray day or a rainy day, they will still turn together as one. So brothers and sisters, what is True Mother asking of us? Just like Dr. Kim said, we are in a new era, not an old era, not a boring era, not a sad era, a fun era, a springtime era. And Mother wants us to build a heavenly community. Does that sound like a bad idea? Mother wants us to build a heavenly world. I'm hearing a lot of quotes from Bishop Noel Jones out there in Los Angeles these days talking about Mother's message here. It turns out that it's quite appealing, the idea of coming together as one holy community under Heavenly Parent. Can you imagine? We're building it here, brothers and sisters, not somewhere else. That is why we are together here. So let us work hard, just like the birds, the bees, the squirrels, as if our life depends upon it. Just like Father mentioned about the bees, like our life depends on it. Let us testify to true parents to the world. Mother's looking for at least 1/3 of the world. 1/3. Let's pick a number. Maybe by 10 years from now, we're talking maybe 3 billion people. Let's imagine 3 billion people really understanding this concept of a Heavenly Parent, holy community. Under True Parents, this is the work that God is doing now. This is the work that all the great saints and sages throughout human history are doing now. This is the work that Jesus Christ is doing now. Just like True Father said in today's Gospel. From your lips, you should be able to say, Heavenly Parent, I have become the person you have been longing for. I have fulfilled your will, your dream that I received from you. I didn't make it up myself, guys. This is what you got to understand. It's not, I'm just making up God's dream by myself. I'm making up God's mission by myself. No, I'm first tapping into what is God's dream for me. And it's completely connected, like Dr. Kim said, to what God's dream is for the whole. So Father goes on to say, we should be able to say, I have fulfilled your will that I received from you as the original Lord, with dominion over everything else. So please instruct me, for you are the person whom God, you are the person that God has been hoping for, waiting for, longing for, that all creation has been waiting for and longing for throughout the 6,000 years of human history, the 6,000 years of God's dispensation. Your happiness, your joy, your mind and body unity, you showing up together with your family, together as one holy community under our heavenly parent. That is what God is waiting for. That is what nature has been waiting for. And I know without a doubt, that is what your original mind, your lifelong childhood dream, your ancestral hope has been longing for, praying for, and waiting for. So we don't want to let any remaining dust from the winter season or any false concepts to block us anymore, do we? That's my point. God has a dream. We are a part of that dream, and it's a joyful thing to be a part of. But we will only struggle if we refuse to be a part of that dream, if we allow our false concepts to limit us again and again and again. So with that, I want to leave you one simple question to reflect on today. And I want you really to reflect on this question now, and also in your community gatherings right after. Talk about this, reflect on this, maybe write down a couple of notes. Here's the question. What limiting concepts will you let go of in order to more joyfully help true parents build the heavenly parent holy community? What limiting concepts? Pick one. You can do another one next week, but think of it like this week. Think of today. What limiting concept will you let go of in order to more joyfully help true parents build this heavenly parent holy community? Now, there's a question to think about. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. Happy Mother's Day, our precious true mother. And God bless you, dear family. Have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful remaining Mother's Day with your family members. And like Dr. Kim said, husbands, make sure that you're planning something for your wives, something for your daughters. I've gotten in trouble many times before. And kids, remember too, if you weren't able to go out and buy a card, make one. No false concepts, guys. We can do this. Thank you.